I got this knot in my chest when I turned the key in my truck that afternoon. It wasn't heartburn. It was something else, like I'd swallowed a rock. Didn't pay much attention then, just shrugged it off. I'd had a rough day at the workshop, cut a board too short, jammed my thumb against the planer, cursed the damn machine. I was supposed to stay there till 6, but a neighbor kid dropped something on my car, and I had to drive back to see if it had dented the roof. That was the only reason I came home early. I wasn't planning to catch anybody doing anything. Truth is, I didn't even suspect a thing. I'm 54. I've seen my share of days. Got married in my late 30s. Met her at a diner. I was coming off a double shift, trying to stay awake with cheap coffee. She was there in a light blue dress, reading a menu like it was a puzzle. She caught me staring, asked if I had a problem. I said, "No, ma'am." She laughed, and we ended up talking about the pie. I still remember that moment. Felt like the world paused just for us. Funny how stuff that seems special can turn sour down the line. We bought this house about a year after we got hitched. Basic 2-story place in a regular neighborhood. Nothing fancy. The lawn's always patchy, the fence is half rotten in spots. But it was ours, something to hold on to. We had a boy, or I thought we did. He's 14 now. Big into Legos and computer games. Never gave me trouble. Mostly quiet, always building something. Good kid. Always called me Dad. Never any sign I wasn't. Every weekday, I'm out the door by 7. Drive to my buddy's old shop. We do custom furniture, small repairs. Nothing that'll make me rich, but it keeps the fridge stocked and the lights on. She works in some office, deals with numbers all day, or so I believed. I never asked too much about it. I figured if she wanted to share, she would. Lately, though, something felt off. Little cracks, like the coffee cups left in the sink with lipstick marks that weren't there a year ago because she hardly wore lipstick at home. Or the way she started locking her phone screen whenever I passed by. I wasn't the suspicious type, but even I noticed. It was a vibe, something you can't quite put your finger on. Like an itch in the back of your mind. Still, I tried to ignore it. Told myself she was just tired, or going through something. Hell, marriage isn't a fairy tale. It's bills, groceries, taking the trash out, picking up after each other. I figured we'd get through it. We'd been through worse. We lost her mom 1 year, lost my dad another. We had times when we barely spoke, times when we argued about money or how I spent too much time tinkering in the garage. But we always came back, had a beer or some cheap wine, sat on the porch, and let it pass. That day, though, something in my gut was twisting. The neighbor kid was messing around in his yard, tossed a baseball or something, it smacked down on my hood. Kid panicked and came running over. Asked me to come check. I looked, saw a small dent near the front. Nothing major, but enough to tick me off. I decided to drive home, get a better look in the driveway. Usually, I wouldn't be back until after 6, more like 6:30. But that day, I headed out around 4. Must have been 4:15 when I pulled into our street. The neighborhood was quiet. Couple dogs barking behind fences, some older lady watering her petunias. I remember noticing her wave, and I barely lifted my hand. Kept thinking about that stupid dent, about how I'd have to hammer it out or pay somebody. Money was already tight. I parked in my usual spot, same place I've been parking for years. The front door was unlocked, which was strange. We've had break-ins around here, so usually we keep it bolted. I even had an argument with her last month about always double-checking the lock. I walked in slow. Called out her name once, but I didn't get an answer. The TV was off, the lights were off. Shoes by the door, her black flats, tossed like she kicked them off in a hurry. My first thought was maybe she stepped out back to grab something. Then I heard a muffled noise from the living room. Not a scream or anything, just some movement, a shuffle. My heart started pounding, but I couldn't say why. Maybe it was the unlocked door. Maybe it was just the weird quiet. I moved down the hallway. I passed the pictures on the wall, wedding photo, Baby photos, Disneyland trip from years back. Walked into the living room. That's my spot. I have this old recliner, brown leather with scratches on the armrest. I always sit there after work, crack open a beer, watch the local news. The remote's usually jammed in the seat cushion, and I get comfortable for half an hour before dinner. Nothing fancy, just a routine I've stuck to. But on that day, I saw something I never thought I'd see. Not in my house. Not on my chair. She was there. With him. Another man. I wasn't sure who he was at first. Didn't recognize him. Didn't matter. He had no pants on, she was half-dressed, and their faces were locked in something vile. My first reaction wasn't anger. It was like my brain froze. I just stood there, a few feet away, staring at two people who seemed like they'd forgotten the rest of the world. They didn't see me right away. Maybe the shock kept me silent. Or maybe I just couldn't form words. My breath got caught in my throat. I felt a pulse in my ears. Something was crushing my chest. Could have been rage, could have been heartbreak, could have been both. Don't know. After a few seconds, they noticed me. She tried to cover herself, stammered my name. He scrambled for his pants. I saw the remote on the arm of the chair, so I picked it up. I fumbled it in my hands. The back slid open, and the batteries dropped into my palm. Then I looked at her. She looked at me like a cornered animal, eyes wide. I didn't say a thing. I couldn't. My voice was gone. I took those batteries and tossed them at her face, small, cold lumps of metal. They hit her cheek and bounced off. She gasped. I saw tears spring up in her eyes, or maybe it was just shock. Then I turned around and walked out. Didn't scream, didn't swing at him, didn't do anything that might have been normal. I just left. My mind felt hollow, except for one clear thought: everything had just changed. I went back outside, got in my truck. Sat there with my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The neighbor's dog barked. The sun was still bright, and I remember thinking how ordinary the world looked, how nobody passing by would guess what just happened in my living room. I looked at the dent on the hood, felt my stomach twist. Part of me thought, maybe I should have stayed at work. But there was no undoing this. What I saw was real. And I could feel something boiling in my gut, something darker than I'd ever felt. I turned the key, but I didn't drive off. I just needed a minute. Couldn't see straight. Couldn't think straight. Finally, I drove around the block. Didn't know where to go. Ended up parking at a gas station, stared at the pump prices for a while. Then I realized I needed to go back. Not to them, but to the house. Because it was my house, my name on the deed. And I had something to take care of. I took a breath, wiped the sweat off my forehead, and headed home. I pulled into the driveway, still shaking. My mind was on fire. I'd never felt that kind of fury before, not when my boss shorted my pay, not when my father died. This was different. I got out of the truck, marched up to the front door. It was open again. I walked in, not caring what I might see. They were gone. The living room was quiet, but the cushions on my recliner were messed up. My remote was on the floor. I stared at that chair for a second. It felt like it was mocking me, like it was no longer mine. That's where I always spend my evenings, my little throne of routine. Now it felt infected. Tainted. I heard shuffling in the kitchen. She was there, alone. Her hair was a mess, shirt buttoned wrong. She looked up at me like she'd just seen a ghost. I saw tears on her face, her cheeks flushed. She opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. I didn't want to hear whatever excuse she tried to make. I could still smell her perfume in the air, mixed with the sweat of what just happened. We stood there silent, for what felt like hours. She tried to take a step toward me. I backed away. My heart was pounding in my throat, and I could taste bile. I still didn't shout. I had no words. All I could think was how to get her out of my sight. She started to speak. "It's not, I didn't, I'm so sorry." It was a tangle of half-baked confessions. My mind was already past that. I looked around the kitchen, the counters, the sink, the little notes on the fridge. Everything felt fake now. Like a stage set. I realized I didn't even know the woman in front of me. Or maybe I never did. I finally managed a sentence. Get out. My voice was low but firm. She looked at me like she couldn't believe I was serious. Then I repeated it. Get out. Now. She grabbed her purse, fumbled for her keys. I watched her go, listened to her footsteps fade down the driveway. I heard her car start. Then the engine noise disappeared. She was gone. I stood alone in the kitchen. Looked at the clock on the wall, 4:50 p.m. I'd only been home a few minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. My eyes landed on a photo of us taped to the fridge. From a trip to the Grand Canyon years ago. She was smiling, leaning her head on my shoulder. I felt my stomach turn. Ripped the photo off, threw it on the floor. It didn't do much good. Still felt that burning inside me. I walked into the hallway, then into the bedroom we shared for over a decade. The bed was unmade, the sheets tangled. I saw my reflection in the mirror on her dresser. Didn't recognize the expression on my face, like I was some stranger wearing my skin. I stared at that mirror, trying to process it all. The memory of them on my chair flashed in my mind. Rage came back, hot and blinding. I stormed into the closet. Her clothes were hung in neat rows, color-coded in some places. She always liked to keep things tidy. I grabbed a handful of dresses, yanked them off the hangers. Didn't even think. I was on autopilot. Carried them out to the yard, found an old metal barrel we used for collecting rainwater. Empty, rusted in spots, but solid enough. I tossed the dresses inside. Went back for more, blouses, skirts, pants, coats, anything that belonged to her. Piled them in the barrel until it was nearly overflowing. Then I marched to the garage. Found a can of kerosene I kept for cleaning tools. Took it out to the barrel. My hands were steady, even though my guts were twisting. I opened the can, poured kerosene over the clothes. The smell was sharp, caught in my nostrils. I fished a lighter from my pocket, a cheap plastic one I used when I grilled. Snapped it. Watched the flame flicker. My mind wasn't racing anymore. It was calm in a strange, focused way. I brought the lighter to the edge of the barrel. A little flame licked up. Then a whoosh. The clothes ignited, bright orange flames leaping up like they'd been waiting for this. Smoke rose, black and dense, curling into the evening sky. I stood there, face hot from the fire. Heard the crackle of her nice fabrics getting destroyed. The smell was rank, chemical. A piece of cloth floated up in the heat, then turned to ash. I kept feeding it with more. I took her shoes, her photo albums, everything personal. Her college diploma was in a frame on the bedroom wall. I didn't think twice, ripped it down, tossed it in. Letters she saved from old friends, postcards, anything that held memories of her. All of it. She wasn't home yet. I didn't care where she'd gone. Didn't care if the neighbors saw the smoke. If they peeked over the fence, let them. I was beyond shame. My world had just collapsed in the space of a single hour. I wanted to scorch everything she touched. Then I found our wedding album in a box under the bed. I paused for a second, staring at the cover. There we were, smiling in white. Younger faces, hopeful eyes. I flipped through a page. Saw my mother's face, saw my father's big grin. Thought of all the speeches, the toasts, the promises. I felt something in my chest tighten. Then I shut the album and carried it outside. Threw it into the barrel. Watched the pages curl and blacken. It was starting to get dark. I heard a car pull up. She was back. Stood there in the driveway, looking at me over the fence. I turned to face her, felt the heat of the flames behind me. She ran toward me, eyes wide, hands trembling. She saw what was in the fire, her dresses, her shoes, photos. Everything. She choked on her words, tears streaming down her face. She reached out like she might try to pull something from the flames, but the heat pushed her back. She sobbed. "What did you do? Why are you doing this?" I didn't raise my voice. Didn't yell. I just stared. Then I said, "You don't live here anymore." That was it. She slumped down, her sobs turning into a wail. Then she got up, tried to say something, but I shook my head. I kept my eyes on the barrel. A lace bra caught fire, flared up bright for a second. Flames licked it away. I didn't feel pity, didn't feel second thoughts. Just that hard anger that gripped my chest. She stood there, tears on her face, no words left. All her stuff was turning to ash in front of her. After a while, the fire started to die down. Clothes became glowing embers. The smell clung to my nostrils, made my head ache. She was still crying, softly now. She asked me if I'd gone crazy. Said something about how we could talk this through. I didn't respond. I thought about how she'd been in my chair with some other man. That image wouldn't leave my head. Finally, I turned to her and said, "Wherever you go next, that's on you. But you're not staying here." My voice shook, but I didn't back down. She tried to protest. I repeated, "Not here." Her tears fell into the dirt. She knew there was no point pleading. I'd never looked at her that way before, like a stranger. She wiped her cheeks, glanced at the barrel, saw her bra strap curling in the ashes. Then she turned and walked to her car. Didn't say goodbye, didn't slam the door. Just left. The night felt thick with smoke and something else, like the end of a story I'd been telling myself for years. I stayed outside a long while, just watching the embers glow, listening to the hiss of burning fabric. A few neighbors must have been peering through windows, but no one came out to stop me. Nobody called the cops or the fire department. Maybe they were afraid to get involved. Maybe they sensed it was something they should stay away from. I didn't blame them. If I saw a man burning everything his wife owned in a barrel, I'd probably keep my distance too. So I stood there till the flames were gone. Till all that was left was a heap of blackened remains. Then I went inside and locked the door behind me. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in the kitchen, staring at the table, my mind spinning like a broken record. The image of her with that guy in my chair kept looping. When I closed my eyes, it was there. When I tried to think of something else, it pulled me back. I felt disgust creeping through me, like an itch under my skin. At some point, maybe around 3 in the morning, I went outside. The ashes in the barrel were cold by then. The sky was clear, the moon bright enough to see the mess. Bits of half-burned photos and scraps of fabric lay at the bottom. I saw something that looked like the corner of her diploma, charred black. I nudged it with a stick, watched it crumble. She didn't come back that night. I half expected her to burst in, screaming or begging. But the house stayed quiet. Just me in the dark, with the smell of smoke in my hair. Around 5, I took a quick shower, changed clothes, and drove to the workshop. I needed to do something with my hands, anything to keep from thinking too much. When I got there, the place was empty. My coworker, Dave, usually shows up after 7. I flipped on the lights, studied the half-finished table I'd been working on. Started sanding it, real slow, focusing on every inch of the wood. The rhythmic motion helped calm the chaos in my head. Felt the grit under my fingers, watched the dust swirl in the light. For a few minutes, I forgot everything. Dave showed up around 7:30, gave me a look. "You're early," he said. I nodded, kept sanding. He must have noticed something was off, but he didn't push. That's what I like about Dave, he knows when to keep quiet. We worked side by side, cutting boards, routing edges, cleaning up scraps. By noon, I felt a bit steadier. Not good, just numb. Then my phone buzzed. I had a feeling it was her. Didn't check at first. Let it ring. Dave left for lunch. The phone buzzed again. Finally, I looked. It was a text. "I'm sorry. Please talk to me." Then another. "We need to figure this out." I set the phone down, didn't reply. A few minutes later, more texts came in. Begging, apologizing, threatening to call the police because I destroyed her property. I let them stack up. Didn't answer a single one. I worked till evening, then drove home. The house was dark. Her car wasn't there. The smell of smoke lingered in the yard. I remembered the flames, the heat on my face. Part of me felt satisfied, like I'd done what needed doing. Another part of me felt hollow, like I'd gutted something inside myself as well. Next day, same routine. Workshop, no real sleep, ignoring messages. She showed up at the shop once. I saw her car pull in. I locked the door, told Dave not to let her in. She pounded on the glass, yelled for me to come out. Dave told her to leave, threatened to call the cops if she kept it up. She left eventually, tires squealing. Dave didn't ask questions. He just gave me a nod. A few days passed. I kept expecting some meltdown, maybe her family or friends showing up at my doorstep. Didn't happen. I guess she was trying to figure out her next move. I kept my distance. Ate junk from the gas station, drank coffee to stay awake. My son was with her sister for the week, some school break or something. I didn't have to see him, didn't have to answer questions I couldn't handle. Then, about a week later, he came home. He was carrying a project from school, a DNA assignment, some genealogical thing. He handed me a paper, said, "Teacher wants you to sign this." I glanced at it. Something about verifying parents' background for a class presentation. Didn't think much of it at first. Just asked him to leave it on the table. He did, then went to his room. I could hear him rummaging through Legos, as usual. That night, I decided to actually read the paper. Turns out they did some basic genetic tests, just a fun, educational thing for biology class. The teacher's note said something like, "Your child's results do not match paternal markers. Please address privately. Feel free to reach out if you have concerns." My heart stopped. I read it again. And again. I checked the website link. Typed in some code. I saw the chart. 0%. No match. I felt the blood drain from my face. This was bigger than the affair. Bigger than the lies I'd just uncovered a week ago. My own boy wasn't mine. He never was. I went cold. My mind raced through every memory. His first steps, first words, me teaching him to ride a bike, the times we built model airplanes together. All those moments I'd thought were father-son bonding. Now a piece of paper was telling me it was a lie. I looked toward his bedroom door. Could hear him humming to himself, probably building some Lego spaceship. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the paper. The air felt thick, like I couldn't breathe. 14 years. 14 years I believed he was mine. And she never said a word. Either she kept it hidden or lied to herself, too. Didn't matter. The result was the same. He wasn't my blood. I wandered into the living room, sank into the couch. Couldn't even bring myself to sit in that recliner anymore. My mind went blank, except for one repeating thought, what the hell do I do now? I could hear him in the other room. The urge to scream at the walls, to break something, flared up inside me. But I didn't want to scare him. Didn't want him to see me like that. He came out at some point to grab a snack. Saw me sitting there with the paper in my hand. He asked, "Dad, you okay?" It took me a second to find my voice. "I'm fine," I said. Probably sounded like a lie. He shrugged and went back to his room. I spent the rest of the night staring at that paper, at the teacher's note, at the ridiculous notion that everything I'd known could change so fast. A week ago, I found out my wife was screwing another man. Now I found out my son isn't mine. And I had no idea who he really belonged to. All I knew was my world had shattered twice in 1 week. I didn't talk to him about it. Didn't text my wife. Didn't call the school. Just let the paper sit there. That night I didn't sleep at all. I heard him snoring in his room, so innocent. No clue what was happening in my head. I felt rage, betrayal, heartbreak. But I also felt an ache in my chest for him, for the boy who believed I was his father. By morning, I decided I couldn't stay there anymore. The house felt poisoned. My life felt like a bad joke. I had a friend in Oregon who'd invited me to come work with him, build a new workshop. He'd been asking for a while. I always said no, because I had responsibilities here, my wife, my son, this house. But now, it felt like I had no reason to stay. My father used to tell me, when the ground starts to crumble under your feet, move. So that's what I set out to do. I waited until my boy left for school the next morning. I packed a bag, just the basics, clothes, a few tools, some personal stuff. Took most of the cash from the joint account. I didn't feel guilty about it. Didn't think twice. I stuffed the bills in my wallet, zipped up my bag, and walked out the door. Before I left, I took one last look at the place. The recliner, still angled toward the TV. The faint scorched smell from outside, drifting in through an open window. 14 years of a life I thought was real. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and dropped the key in the mailbox. Figured she could sort that out. Maybe she'd have to explain it to the landlord or bank or whoever. I was done. Got in my truck, dialed my friend in Oregon, told him I was on my way. He was surprised, but said he'd clear a space for me in his garage. Told me he'd be glad to have someone help with the carpentry jobs he'd lined up. I hung up, started the engine, and drove off. Didn't feel much. Just numb. Halfway out of town, I realized I wanted some kind of payback. Not against my boy, he was innocent in this. But against her. She'd lied for 14 years, let me believe that child was mine. Then she brought some guy into my house, my chair. I wanted her to hurt the way I hurt. So I did something petty and cruel. I found a spam service online. Automated calls every 10 minutes, day and night. Signed up her phone number. Paid extra for overseas lines. I set it up while parked in a rest stop, using my phone. Took me a while to figure out, but eventually I got it done. Entered her number, set the schedule to all hours. Part of me felt sick doing it. Another part felt a grim satisfaction. I drove for 3 days straight, stopping only for gas and cheap motels. The phone kept buzzing with her messages, pleading or cursing me out. She must have been hammered by thousands of spam calls. Voicemails from her came in. "Stop this, you're ruining my life. I can't change my number. It's for work, they're going to fire me." I listened to a few, then deleted them. It didn't make me smile, didn't make me laugh. I just did it because I felt like that was the only power I had left. By the time I reached Oregon, I was exhausted. My friend had a small place, a spare room above his garage. I told him a bit of what happened, just that my marriage blew up. He didn't press for details. Let me crash there, gave me a cold beer, said, "We start work tomorrow." That was that. Weeks passed. Then months. I worked with wood from sunrise to sunset, learned new techniques, built tables and cabinets, sanded until my arms ached. Earned enough to keep myself fed, stashed some away in a coffee can. Didn't talk to my wife, didn't talk to the boy. She kept trying to reach me at first, but eventually, the calls and texts slowed down. Guess she was busy dealing with the spam, the job, maybe lawyers. I heard through an old friend that she got fired. Couldn't keep up with the constant phone calls. Her boss apparently lost patience when clients couldn't get through. One day she was just let go. She tried to take me to court for harassment, but I was gone, out of state. She couldn't prove it was me behind the spam. She had her suspicions, sure, but no hard evidence. And I wasn't about to admit anything. 6 months in, I got a notice to appear in a hearing back in my home state. Something about property division, maybe the house, maybe spousal support. I didn't care enough to go. My friend's address wasn't listed, so the papers took a while to find me. By the time they did, the court date had passed. I shrugged it off. Let her have the damn house if she wanted it. I had no use for it. She must have been desperate, though, because one day I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was some attorney's office. They said they needed to talk. I hung up. The calls kept coming for a while, but I ignored them. Then they stopped. I figured maybe the judge made a ruling without me. Fine by me. Let them do what they want. I was a ghost by then, just a man working with wood in Oregon, living out of a spare room. Some nights I'd sit on the back porch of my friend's place, sipping coffee or a cheap beer. My mind would wander back to my son. I'd wonder how he was doing, if he was okay. I'd even imagine he'd show up one day, ask why I left without a word. But then I'd shut it down. Remind myself that we share no blood. He might still think of me as his dad, but I couldn't get past the betrayal. At some point, he found my new number or my email, maybe from an old family contact. He sent me a message. "Dad, can we talk?" That's all it said. I stared at it for a long time, felt my hand shake. Then I closed it. Didn't answer. I wasn't ready to face him, to tell him what I'd found out. Part of me hated myself for ignoring him, but another part was still raw, angry, lost. I got more messages from him over the next few months. Sometimes short notes about school or how he missed me. Once he sent a picture of the Legos he was building. I didn't respond. Couldn't muster the will. Every time, it ripped open the wound in my chest. I'd shut my phone off, bury myself in work. At the end of that first year away, she must have finally changed her number or something, because the spam messages bounced. Or maybe the service just ended. I heard from Dave back home that she was jobless, ended up moving in with some relative. Tried to rebuild her life. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. I stayed out of it. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I didn't regret it either. I felt like I was just returning the pain she gave me. Probably not moral, but that's how I saw it. Then the court date came around again for the divorce, child support, all that mess. I filed a statement, not contesting anything. Basically said, "He's not my biological kid." Sent copies of the DNA results. Didn't show up in person. The system churned away. In the end, I was off the hook for child support. The judge declared me legally not the father. That was the final nail. Everything we had was burned or broken. Now it's been 2 years. I'm living in a small rental cabin near a lake, still in Oregon. My friend helped me get on my feet. We parted ways after a while. He moved to a bigger city. I stayed. Got my own little woodworking business going. Nothing fancy, just enough to keep food on the table and gas in the truck. I like the quiet here. The lake's about a mile down the dirt road. Sometimes I go there in the evenings, watch the water, skip stones if the mood strikes. I haven't seen my boy, her boy, since the day I left. He sends me messages now and then, short ones. "Hope you're okay." Or, "I got an A on my project." I read them. I don't reply. I can't bring myself to. Maybe I'm a coward. Maybe I'm just too messed up. Part of me wants to tell him it's not his fault, that I never meant to hurt him. But every time I try to type the words, my mind goes back to that night, that chair, the remote batteries, the note from his teacher. I freeze up. People ask if I miss him. I miss the idea of him, I guess. The kid I raised. But the world moved on. He's almost 16 now. Probably got his learner's permit, maybe a girlfriend, maybe a new father figure. I don't know. I don't ask. And he doesn't say. Some mornings, I wake up sweating, heart hammering. Flashbacks to that day in the living room. Her face, the man with no pants, my damn recliner. I clench my fists and feel that anger all over again, fresh like an open wound. Other mornings, I lie there and think about the boy's face, how he used to grin when I'd fix his bike chain or show him how to swing a hammer. Feels like a different life. I don't talk to anybody about it. Folks around here don't ask personal questions. They hire me to make them a bookshelf or fix a creaking porch step. Pay me, maybe offer a beer, then head on their way. That suits me fine. No need to explain why I left my old life behind, why I've got a haunted look in my eyes when someone mentions family. I just keep to myself, keep my head down. Sometimes I wonder if I overreacted. If I should have tried to salvage something for the boy's sake. But then I remember the betrayal, the lies, the affair in my own house, on my own chair. I remember the weight of those batteries in my hand, the way they bounced off her cheek. I remember standing by that barrel, watching her bra go up in flames. She cried, and I felt nothing but anger. So maybe there was nothing left to save. I've told myself 100 times that she had it coming. That I was justified. But when the sun's just rising, and I'm sitting on the porch with a cup of coffee, there's a numbness. Like part of me got burned up in that fire, too. I can't shake that feeling. Probably never will. If someone asked me if I regret it, I wouldn't say yes. Regret implies I want to undo it. I don't. I can't. It's done. But I do feel a kind of weight, a heaviness in my chest that never really goes away. I live with it. I keep busy. Sometimes I think about calling him, my boy, even if he's not mine by blood, and maybe telling him I'm sorry for disappearing. But I just can't cross that line yet. Maybe one day I'll find the courage. In the meantime, I get up every morning, head to my workshop, shape pieces of wood into something useful, something people can put in their homes and lean on. I stay for hours, sanding, cutting, smoothing edges, losing myself in the grain of the timber. By evening, I'm tired enough to sleep without dreaming. That's my routine day in, day out. One night last month, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Inside was a short note. I forgive you. I hope one day you can forgive me too. Your son. There was a small photo of him at some science fair, holding a ribbon. He looked taller, older. I stared at that picture for a long time. Felt tears building up, but I choked them down. Put the photo in a drawer. I haven't looked at it since. Sometimes I wonder if my life might have been better if I'd just come home at 6 like always, if the neighbor kid hadn't dinged my car, if I hadn't walked in on them. But that's not how it happened. And here I am, a man alone, living in a rented cabin, paying for groceries with money I make from cutting wood. It's not a bad life. It's just empty in places I can't fill. Every morning, I wake up to that silence. I brew my coffee, stare at the walls, and remember what I did, how I'd burned her stuff in that barrel, how I left the boy behind, how I turned her phone into a nightmare of spam calls. No one sees it, but I carry it inside. It's like a scar that never fully heals. Doesn't bleed anymore, but it aches sometimes, especially when the nights are long and my thoughts wander. That's the truth of it. No fancy words. Just a man who saw something he couldn't unsee, found out something he couldn't handle, and burned every bridge on his way out. I'm not proud, but I'm not asking for forgiveness either. This is how things ended, and this is how I live now, alone, with the ghosts of what was and what could have been. I guess that's all there is to say. The rest is just silence.